my fellow readers, this is I, Dark Symphony 777 with a fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications. Leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the video and any future fan fictions you want me to read or review. Finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, Don't Even Bother by Glass Hawk. It is a Steven Universe story that was actually suggested to me by one of my subscribers. Thank you, subscriber. I want to name you in case people go after you. And honestly, this is going to be one of those stories. This is going to be a somewhat quick one because there's nothing really worth talking about in this story in terms of like a structure analysis, like an actual critique of it. Like, if I could sum up this story in one word, it'd just be boring. Like, it's boring. It's dull and uninteresting. Like, but that would be like if I could sum it up in one word. But let's go over the technical issues of it, like the structural storytelling aspects. So the story, I guess, is a retelling of how Peridot joins the Crystal Gems, because I'm not too familiar with like the overall story of Steven Universe. I know of the show. I have seen a couple episodes. I know for the most part who the characters are, with the exception of Peridot. Before I actually started reading this story, I actually went online and looked up who Peridot is, because it's like, who are you? And I found out who Peridot was. It's like, oh, that's that one. Why is her head shaped like a Dorito? That was actually my first thought on her design. Why is her head shaped like a Dorito? I saw a couple of videos and she seemed interesting, and so I'm like, all right, maybe we might have something. I don't know. And so I'm probably gonna get like so many facts wrong over, I guess, the lead up to this story, because there are certain stories you find on fanfiction, mainly from shows and TV, like anything that has an episodic format. People will write fanfiction that's supposed to emulate the feel of the show, like you're actually watching an episode. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With this, it's kind of, I guess you could say it's kind of in the middle, because it tries to emulate being like the show, but it also tries to emulate being like an actual story, and it comes off as very, very awkward. So the story actually starts with, I guess, the whole, I guess, fusion thing. Like I said, I'm not familiar with Steven Universe, so bear with me on this. Steven notices Pearl building this communications array, and then he tells Garnet, and then Garnet confronts Pearl. Pearl's like saying, I want to be able to fuse. I like fusing, stuff like that. I think that's an actual thing that happened in the show. Like I said, I know at least fusion is a thing, because I saw the episode that introduced the whole fusion concept with Opal. But outside of that, it's like I didn't know. So I did know it existed. I just didn't think, I just don't know the whole aspect behind that. And Garnet is like upset because apparently she's a fusion herself, and I didn't even know that. So they fight, and then they start not talking to each other. And Steven one day comes across Pearl, and she's like talking to herself, and she's holding like a picture of rose quartz. And she said, I wish you were here. And then Steven kind of misinterprets that as, them convincing himself that they just see him as rose quartz rather than him. And so he runs away. And it's like, okay, fine, a simple running away plot. Nothing too big, just okay, something. And then he goes to a place called the Kindergarten, and not familiar with that. And he runs into Peridot, who's hiding out there. And then like that, at the same time, like it's one of those split plots. It's one of those split plots at first. My eyes irritating me. The Crystal Gems find out Steven's went missing, so they go looking for them, and they actually start worrying, but they're still trying to fix the relationship between Garnet and Pearl. And then Steven's dad gets involved, and they all look for him. And I guess Pearl and Garnet kind of reconcile. Well, at the same time, Steven and Peridot, they're stuck in like a little hideaway hole, and they start hanging out, they start talking, and then they become friends. And so I'm really just summarizing the plot. Bear with me. Crystal Gems find Steven and Peridot. They confront him. They attack Peridot. Steven defends her. I wonder if there's any male gems. No. This just makes me, because we see like every single mention of a gem was like always been female, so it's like it makes me wonder if there are like any male gems. I don't know. So Steven defends Peridot. They're like confused, and Steven brokers a deal with Garnet saying, "I will come back to Beach City if Peridot comes with me." And then the whole second, and that's the first half. The second half is just Peridot and Steven living at the car wash where his dad lives, and then just various things happening. It honestly, hence why I honestly thought it's supposed to emulate what the show was like. So because it kind of feels like the show, but at the same time, it's boring. This is my first complaint with the story. It's directionless. It has nothing really going on. Like that one Castlevania reading I did that I mentioned. It's just a bunch of words that you try to say so much and mean so little. This is the same thing, except that story was I think like what, a couple thousand words. This is over 100,000 words, which easily could have been like cut down by half. Like this is way too long for what the author is trying to accomplish. It's way too lengthy, and that causes the story to kind of feel very boring. Like 9 times out of 10, like okay, it's Steven runs away, meets Peridot, becomes friends with Peridot. The crystal gems catch them. Steven makes a deal with Garnet, becomes friends with to bring Peridot back to the city with him. They hang out, and then they all kind of become friends at the end. It's like okay, but that is it. It has no direction. Like it honestly doesn't try to do anything with purpose. It's just random parts and people talking. And if you're trying to do an angst story, no. That is just absolutely bad. That's another thing. Off topic for a second. Angst and her comfort. Why? But why though? That is absolute, for this type of story, that's absolutely the worst pairing of genres you should do. Especially after I read the story. And I'm like, this is not an angst story. I've read angst stories. Better Off Alone. Melancholia. Like, you can kind of classify that as an angst, despite the fact it's more classically a drama. But you can have some leeway to make it angst. This ain't an angst story. This is a melodrama. Which, it's kind of weird because we have an angst genre tag, but we don't have a melodrama. Which is weird. I don't know. But anyway, I bet you're wondering what a melodrama is. The reason I'm talking about the genre is because it kind of ties into the plot. So a melodrama is basically a sort of reverse type of regular drama. Usually with dramas, they usually have immaculate three-dimensional character development in order to tug on the heartstrings and invoke emotions through that character development. Melodramas are the opposite. They use feelings and feelings alone to try and invoke character development. The problem is, melodramas are actually kind of weird in the fact that they're not exactly easy to try and figure out. What would be a character I think is Rarity from My Little Pony. She's melodramatic. That's basically her whole shtick. Is she's over the top, moody, emotional, and that's it. But the problem is, with the way that show was, that was just her personality. But the whole show wasn't a melodrama. It was, I guess, a cartoony show about ponies. What's the genre of that? Genre of Friends with Magic? Friendship? No. Slice of life. I have no idea what genre My Little Pony. It honestly feels like it's trying to do like every single genre at once, like depending on the episode. So I don't even know. I don't even know. But that's her character. Like you can have characters whose full personality is melodramatic, but when you're trying to make an entire story based off melodrama and then call it an angst, it kind of comes off as really weird. Hurt and comfort, fine. You can actually make an argument for being hurt comfort, but the angst tag has no purpose being there. It does not because angst is still technically labeled under drama because dramas usually have like really well developed characters, which segues into character development. Hit or miss. Like you basically have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters in the entire story. You have the Crystal Gems, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, Steven and Peridot, Steven's dad, and a girl named Connie. Connie Marsh. I will not pronounce that name. Marshwan. Priyanka. Ranka. I think that's her mom's name. Anyway, for the most part, for what the author was trying to do with them, they served their purpose. Like Connie's just there as a MacGuffin to kind of get the ball rolling to cause the Crystal Gems to find Peridot because Peridot goes. There's a part in the story where Steven and Peridot go get donuts, and Peridot goes under disguise. Connie sees, Connie overhears some of the workers there and says, "Okay, it's a weird one, so maybe Steven might know something about it." And so watches him, and then Amethyst oversees her, and then tells her what the person might look like. Amethyst connects dots, and then that kind of causes them to find Peridot and by extension Steven. So it makes sense. Steven's that he's basically he's nice, like I said, like Connie, he does what he's supposed to do. I do like the running gag involving the van. Like I'll talk about more in a bit. But he's just, he's the dad who's supposed to like perk up Steven and stuff like that. That's fine. The Crystal Gems are actually fine as well. Nothing too over the top, nothing too substantial. They have their little quirks and they get a little bit of character development throughout the story. It's fine for what it is. Now we have Peridot and Steven. This is where the whole melodrama sinks the story. They're way too moody. Like, I get what you're trying to do. I get what the author is trying to do. You're making this a melodrama, except you labeled it as an angst. Fine, but it's a little too much. Like there's a point where the sadness kind of goes from angst to melodrama, and this story kind of just drags it over to that far end spectrum of just so much over the top, crying and anger and stuff like that. Like there's a chapter doesn't go one paragraph with like Steven or Peridot or any of the Crystal Gems or Connie or Steven's dad just straight up bawling and crying for some reason. Like, fine, you want to make an angst story? Go ahead. This ain't the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. If you labeled it as a drama, I would have seen no problem. I would actually completely ignore it for the most part. It was like, okay, you're not doing a traditional drama. You're doing a melodrama. But since you picked angst, then we have a problem. But even like without going into the whole thing with angst, their characters are flat. You have the Crystal Gems and Steven, Dad, and Connie. They have like at least decent character arcs and stuff like that. And then you have these two, which wouldn't be so bad if not for the fact that they are the main characters. The whole story revolves around these two, and they come off as very one-dimensional with what they're trying to be. Like, Steven is like a moody kid, okay, fine. And he goes and runs away. Fine, okay, we're gonna see him, like, own up to his mistakes. Maybe the Crystal Gems are gonna reconcile each other. And then, when they meet Steven, they're gonna, like, say, hey, we're together again. And then, then the rest of the story was gonna be, like, Steven trying to convince Crystal Gems that Peridot is a good person. Which kind of makes sense, except for the fact the whole second part of the story just completely ruins that. They reconcile, they meet Steven, they don't forgive Peridot, and then the majority of the second half of the story is just them goofing off at their dad's car wash. Why? They don't. After the first half of the story, they just flounder around. It's like there's just, again, there's that sense of directionlessness. Like they're just doing so for the sake of doing stuff, and that would be fine, if it was a one or two or twice thing that happened in that entire half of the story. But no, that's the majority of the second half of the story, and the fact they just do nothing. They just hang out, they talk, they go, woe is me, and weep, and it's so over the top that I couldn't take any of that seriously. Because one, it happened so frequently, and two, especially with Peridot, it's just so over the top that that any sense of emotional connection you're supposed to feel with that story from that part is ripped away because of just how over the top it is. Woo! Like I said, it wouldn't be such a bad problem if not for the fact that Steven and Peridot, they're supposed to be the main characters. The fact that all the side characters got character development, but these two didn't, kind of is really weird, to be honest. So yeah, that's it with characters. Grammar. I didn't see anything wrong with the grammar. Like, it's fine for what it is. Like, nothing really bad. However, I will have to say something about the sentence structure. It's weird. Like, I guess what the author was trying to do, like I said, it's wanted to emulate the story. Like, you're actually watching an episode of Steven Universe. For some reason, throughout the entire story, every time when a paragraph ends, it ends with someone saying something, and then at the beginning of once it goes to like a new paragraph from someone else's point of view, the first thing is not always, but almost always, the last sentence is the last paragraph. It's really awkward. That kind of causes that whole sentence structure to kind of become jumbled in a way, because it kind of fits like you're trying to just completely randomize whose point of view it is. Like, again, I can see why you were trying to do this, but the problem is why you try and actually putting on paper is two different things. Like, you probably just thought it was a good idea in your head, but once you actually read it, that whole idea falls completely apart because it comes off as not forced, not poorly executed, because, these ideas have been, this whole thing has been done well in the past. But it comes off as very jumbled, like you're contradicting how your story is trying to be. Like, you're trying to make the story like show. You don't do it's one of those things that just does not translate very well to stories. And the reason why, when stuff like drama, when it happens like that, it's usually only when it's like a big, big moment. Uh, but this happens all the time. Just like, the whole over-the-top melodramatic whining and crying. This is oversaturated to the point it saps all emotional investment away from the story. It just comes off as hollow. It comes off as very awkward, so to speak. And that's very bad when you're trying to make a story that's supposed to feel like an actual episode of the show, or I guess an arc. Like I said, I'm not familiar. I'm just guessing. Pacing. Pacing is fine. Like I said, it tries to be like the show, which makes sense. The main problem is the main problem with the pacing is more directly tied into the plot. Like the direction, like the fact that there's no clear direction for the story just completely torpedoes the pacing because since everyone is just doing random things for no reason, not advancing the story at all for the majority of the second part, it feels like the pacing is like running its wheels. It's like it's just standing there in place and nothing's really being done. Like the second half of the story is like from chapter 14, 15 to like the end, which is like 28, chapter 28. And all but the last 3 chapters, nothing is done in terms of actual plot, like moving the plot forward, moving the characters forward. Nothing is done. And when I get to, Steven, like, Pearl, meeting Peridot and getting to know her and then becoming friends with her, and the whole thing with the crystal gems, it honestly feels as it's too little too late in that regard. Oh boy, that is just, it's just really weird in terms of the pacing. Like, the pacing would have been fine if not for the story had some kind of direction it was going in that second half. And even to a lesser extent, the first half. Like, the first half was at least trying to have some sort of direction, but just like the second half, the whole thing was just running in its wheels that it kind of got very boring very fast. Like, okay, it's really, there's just a sense of lethargy permeating throughout the entire story. That's what it reads like. Honestly, I would have actually finished this story much quicker if not for the fact I was working a lot. I was helping a friend with a favor in terms of fanfiction. I'm actually beta reading a story right now. And this story bored me so much, I continuously stopped reading it just so I have some kind of excitement to read it again, to continue it. At least it's not like misconceptions and boringness. But at least that story had a purpose. That story had amazing character development. That story was an excellent angst story. Besides the fact it's not technically an angst story, it's more of a drama, but semantics. The story is just running in its wheels from beginning to end. Like, there's just so little happening in the grand scheme of things that it's just impossible to get any sort of attachment. So, I did something unique for once. I'm going to mention this before I get into, the end part of it. I decided to, look through the reviews. And it was just, no one's offering any critique. They're just saying, Peridot's awesome. Peridot is adorable. Yeah, Steven, hug Peridot. All the hugs. And it's like, is no one even actually critiquing the story? This story has 658. Like, there are stories that I want, like, why does this have so little reviews? With this story, I'm wondering, why does the story have so many reviews? Like, or at least have someone actually critique it. Like, someone actually saying, here's my honest thoughts. Like, okay, here's what could be improved. Here's what's good about this chapter. So on and so forth. No, it's just all Peridot. Peridot. Yeah, we love Peridot. Why? The story doesn't need all these reviews as just basically boiling down to let me make out with Peridot. Love Peridot. Peridot all around. Why? Just why? Would I recommend the story? No, I really can't. There's just so little going on with the story that I can't. I just really can't. I wanted to give some kind of reason why I wanted to at least recommend the story, if even hesitantly. But there's just so little going on. Especially with an Aang story. Like, come on. Like, really? Why is this an Aang story? Why, though? But yeah, like, the fact that story doesn't go in a direction, it doesn't go anywhere, it just perpetually spins its wheels over the course of 128,000 words, completely synced it. I would have forgave the weird sentence structure. I would have forgave the fact that Peridot and Steven are pretty flat for the main characters. I would have forgiven all the other flaws if the story didn't run in place the entire time. If the story had some sort of direction and didn't run in place, I probably would have recommended it. I would have hesitantly recommended it, but I can't. Because there's just nothing going on. There's just nothing to really get attached to. It's boring! It's boring! I read boring stories before, but, like, at least the other stories that I said were boring, like Tales of the Frog Princess, at least they had a direction. Like, with Tales of the Frog Princess, that whole story was supposed to emulate a classic old school vibe of like old Britain, not Grimm Brothers fairy tales, but at least give you like a nostalgic vibe for like the old school fairy tale stories. That at least had a direction. It had a purpose. What is the story's purpose? What is the direction the author's trying to do this story with? Just nothing happens. It's just mind-boggling dull how much the story is. Oh my god. Oh my god. Do I have a favorite part? Yes, actually, I do have a favorite part. And it's what I like to call Steven, Peridot, and the van, because I actually thought it was actually pretty funny. Does the story progress the plot in any way? No. Does this part even offer any character development? No. Is it shameless fun and levity and like a sea of gray? Yes. So basically, so the part takes place during chapter 18 when Steven goes starts talking with his dad. And he's like, hey. I'm trying to remember the scene from heart. There it is. Now I remember. So Steven's dad offers to treat Steven to lunch. And he goes, okay, I'm going to treat you to this the pizza, the TT, I don't know the acronym for it. The pizza. It's like, yeah! It's like, alright, I'll be right back. And he walks to get the pizza. Cue Peridot hijacking the van. Get inside the van. Steven's like, oh no, get out, get out. And like, Peridot, what are you doing? I'm trying to figure out what this vehicle is. A van. Right, a van. And it's like, okay. And so Steven's like, okay. And she's just checking it out. And then she turns on the van. And like, Peridot. What? I'm trying to. What? I want to work this. I want to figure out how it works. And then she goes and drives it. She tries it, but it doesn't move. And Steven's like, whew. It's parked. This would have nothing to work. It's like, aha, I found out this thing allows you to change. Maybe it might help me drive. And he's like, there. Cute Peridot getting in the drive and riding it. Honestly, it's a funny thing. And then the scene actually cuts away to Steven's dad, getting the pizza, and he's like, and everyone starts panicking about like, and he sees the fan, like, wait, was that my? Like Steven is like panicking, like trying to get Paradox. Like, stop driving! He's like, I don't wanna. It's like, go ahead, Dad. It's like, okay, you're driving on the wrong side. And so, like, it's kind of funny, and I'm actually kind of enjoying myself through that entire thing. And this whole little driving thing ends when Steven comes up with like the most batshit thing ever, to the point where you can see Keanu Reeves and like a remake of Speed doing it. It's like, Paradigm! We humans have a disease called spontaneous combustion. What does that mean? If we're driving above a certain speed limit for X amount of minutes, we burst into flames. We die. And she stops the car and is like, no, you're not gonna stop. You're not gonna burst into flames, are you? No, fine. Fine. And then it ends with Steven getting out of the car and then opening the hood, taking out the battery. It's like, never again. And so it kind of becomes a running theme throughout the entire second half of the story, where Paradox constantly bothers Steven, says, like, can I drive the van? No. And Steven and his father's like trying any which way to like keep the van away from Paradox. To like at the end when Steven's dead, about to take him to the crystal gem, she like sees the key. It's like, I'm lucky she didn't grab that. And it's a neat little running gag. I laughed at every time it was mentioned. At least the running gag was executed fine, But that's just one thing amongst the sea of nothing. Just nothing. So, what would I do to fix this story? Honestly, the biggest thing, the two biggest things I would do: cut the story in half. Like, the story should not be this long. At the very most, it should be like 80,000 words. Like, get rid of like there's so much filler, unnecessary filler in this story. Change the genre, get rid of angst, switch it with drama. It's a melodrama, but it's still technically classified under drama. And finally, most importantly, give the story some kind of direction. Give the story some kind of purpose for why it's doing the things it's doing. If the whole idea of the story is just Steven meets Peridot and Peridot becomes friends, that's just completely falls off the wheels when the crystal gems find them, and then nothing's solved, and it just feels like nothing's happening. Like, when Steven becomes friends with Peridot, it just happens way too fast. Like, they argue for like a couple of sentences, and it's like he's just like me, and they become friends instantly. Why? Why is that like that? Oh. Give this story some kind of... Give all the action the story was doing some kind of purpose. Something, anything. Give it some kind of direction. If you want to make it longer, go make it longer to at least, let Peridot become more acclimated to Beach City. Honestly, this would be much better to just cut it. Like, get rid of, 30,000, 40,000 words. Get rid of all, needless... Like, half the arguments are just there just to have arguments. Or, half the time, they're just crying for the sake of crying. Like, nothing. So, that is my review on Don't Even Bother. Like, I tried to give the story the benefit of the doubt. I couldn't. Oh... I feel nothing but boredom out of it. Even Misconception, that story bored the hell out of me too. But at least I can say that story had amazing character development. There's been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.